Dear friends, welcome to Audiobooks N, the channel that shares knowledge for personal development through good books. This week, I would like to share with you a piece called Understanding Your Three Selves through the book The Ego and the Id. The Vietnamese translation is The Ego and the It. The original version was published in 1920 and is considered the masterpiece of psychologist Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. Freud is also known as one of the three Jews who changed modern thought. The author states that human understanding of consciousness is only the tip of the iceberg, and that the unconscious hidden beneath the surface is what really matters, influencing our psychology and emotions. This classic psychology book will show you that you have three selves within you: id, ego, and superego, also known as instinct, ego, and superego. This is the core mental model of psychoanalysis. The relationship between instinct, ego, and superego can be illustrated by a famous painting of a chariot carrying passengers. The horse with reins is the instinct, the rider in the middle is the ego, and the passenger waving and shouting at the back is the superego. Here, instinct represents desire. When you are instinct, you will follow the pleasure principle to act and express the most unconscious instincts of a human being. Ego represents reason. When your ego is in control, it will try to change the pleasure principles into reality principles, helping you to take responsibility for solving problems in life. Superego represents moral guidance. It sets goals, evaluates different behaviors of yourself, and is also the self that everyone aspires to become. The reason why many people often feel miserable, confused, and have difficulties in life is because they do not know how to handle the relationship between the three selves within themselves. So today, let's embark on a journey to learn about the three selves, instinct, ego, and superego, so that we can better understand the person inside each of us. Please listen to the content shared today. Feeling inferior is due to the ego and superego being in conflict with each other. Have you ever felt this way? In fact, you are a person with your own strengths and highlights. You have done many things well, but you always feel that you are not equal to others. Although you are very dedicated to your work, when you encounter some obstacles, you will react by saying, "Why can't I do it well?" Clearly, you are friendly, but when you have a conflict with others, you always think that I'm not okay and I don't deserve to be loved. If you have had many times in your life thinking that you are not trying hard enough, not good enough, or not confident enough, you might want to think about a famous conclusion of the author. When something in the ego is consistent with the superego, people will feel happy, but if it is the opposite, it will create feelings of inferiority or guilt. That is, people who are often in the habit of denying themselves. The reason is that in their minds, they always strongly idealize their own superego. For them, the superego is a perfect, beautiful self that is admired by everyone, never fails, and can do everything well. However, the more the superego is worshipped and the more perfect expectations it has, the more the ego hates itself. Treat, in the book The Courage to Be Disliked, is a man who is only 1.55 meters tall. When he goes to work or travels, he always feels like someone is pointing behind his back. This made him feel particularly uncomfortable, and he confided in his friends, "If only I could be 20 centimeters taller, or even just 10 centimeters, I would definitely have a happier life." But then his friend told him that the people he thought were talking about him behind his back weren't actually talking about his height, but were actually saying that he was a kind, knowledgeable, eloquent, and polite person. Treat suddenly realized that it was he, not anyone else, who was making him feel uncomfortable and self-conscious. The feeling of inferiority stemmed from the ego within him, dreaming and fantasizing about becoming an ideal superego with a taller and more handsome appearance. That is why he unconsciously hated himself. However, the more you feel inferior and crave to be more ideal in appearance, education, or career, the greater the gap between the ego and the superego will become. When this balance is lost, you will never be able to live as your true self. One writer once said, People generally have about 10 advantages. If you don't have all 10 advantages, you will have at least 3 to 4 advantages. In this world, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Blindly disregarding yourself will only trap you in the narrow cage of your ego, and you will miss out on opportunities to grow and transform. In the classic psychology book Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl writes about inferiority and superiority, also stating that the feeling of inferiority in most people stems from comparing oneself to others. Especially physical and appearance defects will make a person feel stressed and inferior. This kind of inferiority complex is also caused by comparison and is difficult to cure. In fact, Frankl suffered from humpback and had great difficulty moving from a young age. He felt small and ugly, so he often felt inferior. But he later decided to become a doctor, shifting his focus from his physical flaws to his strengths. This is what helped him overcome his inferiority complex and achieve extraordinary results. In fact, to stop constantly comparing yourself to others, the key is that we need to understand that it is all due to your ego wanting to achieve a perfect self. Let go of expectations for the perfection of this perfect self, and accept the real you. The more you crave and dream of things you don't have, the more deficient and inferior your inner self will be. Only when you learn to love all of who you are now, both the good and the bad, can you stimulate your true potential. Falling into anxiety is because the superego demands too much from the ego. The source of anxiety in everyone is due to an exaggerated sense of self. In this book, Freud shows us the root cause behind anxiety. It lies in the excessive demands of your superego. You will find that some people have a superego that sets low requirements, so the ego can easily coordinate the relationship between the id, ego, and superego. If all three live in peace, the human heart will not be anxious and restless for no reason. But some people have a superego that always demands too much, while their ability to control the ego is limited. It cannot overcome the obstacles of the id. At this time, all three are struggling with each other, and people will feel anxious and depressed inside. In other words, once you set too high a standard for yourself and don't allow yourself to make mistakes, anxiety will multiply from there. If left unchecked, it will spread like poison until it takes over your entire mind and ruins your life. Social psychologist Sheena Iyengar, through a study, found that there are two types of people. The first type are people who always like to find all possible options to choose the best one, called maximizers. The second type are people who just need to find a solution that is satisfactory enough, called satisficers. Maximizers will take more time to choose, and their choices will be much more perfect than the choices of satisficers. However, sadly, no matter how perfect the choice, they may still not be satisfied with their decision. Even more sadly, overall, compared to satisficers, maximizers often feel less happy, more pessimistic, have lower self-esteem, and have lower levels of life satisfaction. They are also more prone to regret, self-blame, and depression. A large body of psychological research has confirmed that having a demanding mentality will lead to depression and anxiety and reduce quality of life. You might think that a superego that sets high standards for the ego will help you progress. But in a study, Ellen Langer, a positive psychologist at Harvard University, explored the impact of being open to mistakes. Through an experiment, she randomly divided participants into 3 groups and asked them to give a speech. Group A believed that they had to prepare in the best possible way and were not allowed to make mistakes. These were the perfectionists. Group B believed that mistakes were inevitable. These were the self-forgiving ones. Group C thought that the presentation might have one or more unexpected errors. These were the curious and open-minded ones. The result was that Group C felt the most comfortable, the least anxious while presenting, and overall received the highest ratings from the audience. This happened because these people appropriately lowered the demands of their superego. Instead, they focused on their own experience. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Making mistakes is not something we should avoid. When mistakes happen, We shouldn't just use comfort and appeasement to resolve them. Making mistakes can be encouraged and honored. It can even lead to better performance. Try to remember the bold mistakes you made as a child. Learning to speak, do you remember how many meaningless words you said back then? But were you worried? We weren't worried at all. On the contrary, we gradually learned everything with joy. So now, try to remember when you first developed an aversion to making mistakes, to the point where you always demanded too much of yourself and became afraid to make mistakes. It's time for you to allow yourself to stop and not be too hard on yourself. Let the three selves within you live in peace, and anxiety can be relieved. True progress is not about anxiously demanding yourself, but about taking your self-acceptance with you on the journey of experiencing the joy of progress. Not being able to escape the past is because the ego does not accept the id. Freud discovered a phenomenon in 2-year-old children. When the mother leaves, the child will constantly throw toys out of the crib, then stagger to pick them up. The purpose of the child is to avoid their own helplessness and dispel the sadness caused by separation. The author calls this phenomenon repetition compulsion. When a person is not willing to accept the weakness of their id, they will not be able to escape the prison of negative emotions, and can only continue to repeat the cycle of suffering. I have a friend who, as a child, because her parents were busy working far away, was often sent to stay at other people's houses for a few days. Sometimes she stayed with relatives, sometimes with neighbors. The fear of the unfamiliar environment around her and the strong feeling of abandonment made her gradually not want to express her true emotions. So, growing up, she often had difficulties in intimate relationships. She rarely asked her partner for help and only spoke up after everything was resolved. None of her relationships lasted very long because her partner felt she was too distant. Clearly, she longed for an intimate relationship but was worried that she would be abandoned again. So, her subconscious chose to isolate herself. This is a manifestation of not accepting the weak id. When you are hurt, the sadness and despair emanating from the id will be like bruises that stagnate in your subconscious. No matter how hard you try to avoid, deny, or defend yourself, they will keep coming back to haunt you with suffering. The only way we can escape this is to be honest and face the feelings of our id. A person who experiences suffering, but if they don't feel the pain, experience the pain, and reconcile with themselves, the pain will never be released. The reason you can't live the life you want is because your ego is doubting your superego. The book The Crowd, a study of the popular mind by French psychologist Gustave Le Bon is a book that profoundly influenced Freud. This book presents the theory of the collective unconscious. What is the collective unconscious? When a drop of water is still a drop of water, it can be rainwater, river water, or seawater. But when it mixes with other drops of water, it is just a molecule of river water or a molecule of seawater. Similarly, we are just isolated individuals. We each maintain relatively distinct individual characteristics. Some people have a warm personality, while others have a distant personality. And when we integrate into a group, our individual personality is often suppressed. Our thoughts will be replaced by the thoughts of the group. When faced with a group of people, more or less, we will restrain our expressions and suppress our emotions. I bought an item I liked and wanted to post it on social media to express my joy, but I was afraid that others would mock me for showing off, so I decided to delete it. In the meeting, I didn't agree with my colleague's point of view. I wanted to express my opinion but was afraid that others would think I was deliberately not cooperating, so I chose to remain silent. And you will find that there are many other similar situations in life. From the collective unconscious psychology, Freud pointed out the reason for such behaviors. When an individual exists alone and separates from the group, that person will feel imperfect. Therefore, people will gradually abandon their ideal self, that is, their superego, and switch to the ideal group that the leader symbolizes. The world is always crowded and bustling. People cannot live without connections. Being overwhelmed by the noise from the outside world and swayed by the opinions of others is inevitable. The measure of a person's maturity is not to follow the standards of others, but to always follow their own path. Have you ever met people who are not good at singing but still eager to sing? There are people who are not good at speaking but love to speak up. Do you think these people really like to show off? If you think so, it also means that you have unconsciously followed a crowd psychology that only when you are really good, really perfect, you dare to stand out and express yourself. Otherwise, you will be ridiculed, and you yearn to be someone who stands out in the crowd. There is a true story like this. A man liked to play the guitar and wanted to perform in front of everyone at a party. He mustered up the courage to go on stage. But because he was just starting out, he wasn't very good. Some people suggested he go home and practice more, while others mocked him for making noise. However, he was not fazed by the sarcastic remarks and was determined to finish his performance. Afterward, he sincerely told everyone, "I know I'm not very good, but no matter what everyone thinks, I really enjoy the process of playing." The expectations of others will always shake our own desires. But how can we prevent the judgments of others from affecting us? There is a saying, words from the outside world for reference only. If you don't like it, don't refer to it. We don't come to this world to seek the approval of others, but to do what we like and live the life we want. But that doesn't mean you can disregard everything and let everyone around you do whatever they want. It means you need to have a proper awareness of yourself. When standing in a collective, don't look up to any other external ideal. No matter how hard you try, you can't please everyone. Instead of worrying about the gains and losses in the judgments of those around you, it's better to focus on your inner desires and try to live according to your own ideal path. As the author said, the root of human suffering lies in the incompatibility between subjective desire and objective reality. We always like to exaggerate the difficulties of objective reality, thinking that all suffering comes from the ups and downs of life and the misfortunes of circumstances. But in fact, when you know that you have three selves, you will understand that at any time, which self is taking over and creating an imbalance in your inner self. It is your own subjective desires that play a decisive role in your destiny. Don't be immersed in the desires of the id. Don't drown yourself in the expectations or fears of the ego when judged by others. And don't be led astray by the excessive demands for perfection of the superego. When you are calm, peaceful, and rational enough, you will be able to build a solid inner world, like a pyramid, to stand strong and firm on your own path of destiny. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who need it. Give me a like, click the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to watch the latest videos every week. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.